Paden Dawataba Umajuba Sungda. Kansi Rawan Juji, Tunapa, getting dear down Zimber Machina, Yansar Lume Shawan Jugura, Telechin, Kangalon, yours. Teaching loved
in his supplement to the treatise on Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle way, Nagarjuna Chandrakirti stated, "Now I have independence in favorable conditions. If I do not take full advantage of this time, I will plunge into the abyss and fall under the control of others. Who will lift me out?"
Oh, Dindungarazukasura. Tajoji Milutone. Shuchena ko Rawa Yube Kamdilisgora. Kanzi Rawa Juji, Tunabas, and it Tumbe Yuna Chudube, Tunjin the Kangan Zombe, Kamdilasgora. Oh, Tini Kanzi Rawa Juji Tunaba. Getting dear than Zimba Machina. But then Milu Caberja Tobe Kamdilia, and Rani Kawachima, Mason de Medua, Sadako, Meyoko Toyata, Tarbada, Tamjachima Toyagi, Tabchichima Dubnasgora. Getting dear than Zimbar Machinas. Talalungali and Zimbar Machina, Kavia Tashimachina Sigora. Yansa Lungashan, Jujura, Telechin the Kangalon, Yansa Malum Sane, Niasola Machi, Sarsona. Telechin Kangal, and she teaches Yatene, Mondolamico Toyata, Tindu Suyatene, Lantugude, Lantugumare Sigora. Oh, Pena, Nipaude, Korantumbe Yuna Ne. Rangi Pungso Yu Kanga Chetu Bekabdile Tradichom Maduna. Aniko Mizu Kambala water to Dam Koranchibu, Tang Tong Basili Yu Shasnako Kakechia Yomarwa, Tidichi Sarwa, or Dineshi membership, and the Tapshisha Uresungwa.
So when he says, "Now I have independence in favorable conditions," he is saying that we have a human life with leisure and opportunity, so we have all the requisites for practicing the teaching, putting the teachings into practice, learning the teachings, and putting them into practice. So at this point, if we do not take full advantage of them, taking full advantage of them means that we have to avoid being reborn into one of the miserable realms and to be reborn as a human or a deity, and then in addition to that attain liberation or omniscience. Any of these things will keep us from from falling into the abyss, as Chandrakirti says. Then, once we fall into the abyss, then we haven't done anything up to that point and fall into the abyss, then how are we going to get out of that? Who can help us? How can we get out of our unfortunate rebirth at that point? So the example is of a king. Bao and Gyalbo. Okay, so it's a hero. Is it some kind of a heroic figure who has a lot of enemies and but is very strong and can overcome them? And so if he overcomes them, then he has nothing to nothing to worry. But if instead of that, if they get a hold of him and wrap him up and tie him up and tie and gag him, I guess we'd say, and then put him in the middle of a desert, exactly what is he going to do that time? So we have to think in terms of that example.
Oh yeah. Jawa Sangbolin al Susu Tandako, Rawa Yabadisira, Rawa Kandi Yorisina, Jawa Sira Mangul Sashabe, Mikiwa Solia, Shala Sochebal Shapache, and Sedilia, Socheba Pan, Sochap, Machimbalemba, Chimbatan, and Soba, Mikiwa Chudi Papa, Tin Dojo Chudi Sutune, 아니 기회 삼로라 곰디치기나 치글라몰라 고 기회 삼로 기용거라 디운디오네 고시스나 라다 밀리기 그러마도 예술을 기해요 말어 그 라마이어 버리스테도 저치마 컨디션 밀리라야다 테치도 짐바타야다 서버코메다 강가라지 체네 제요라 디엔디고 딘데체네네 계속 개발체 기간에 시수나 라다 밀리기 그러마도 예술을 기기 말어 다 추출해지라 디데고 당원에 라마이어 버리스테도라
So we really do have independence if we apply ourselves to the teachings, and this means that any kind of misdeed or wrong that we've done, we have to engage in confession to purify ourselves of that, and also we have to do whatever we can to abstain from the 10 non-virtuous deeds, killing and stealing, sexual misconduct, etc. Where we're just basically abstaining from doing those, but also we can engage in cultivating the virtues that are the opposite of that, and in addition to that, other virtues like generosity and patience and so forth. Then if we've done that, then we have nothing to worry about having to fall down into an unfortunate rebirth.
뭐야 어디인데 저치마 밀리삼 토바테삼 마이바 타르바다 탐제kin 바토야게 고 사비 초사에 돈달로 단단에 고 미다바다 동야와다 미장을 소바고 되네 다음에 발로 소바 아니 산제지 고바 토베치도 딱베신에 집에 차주심 잠바닝지 솔랑아라서 메시테날 고 장바체네 장기니 장요라 어디인데 고 라다메 고바 방아지 톱데 텐도네 잠바다닝지 장주기심 고야니 밀로 소바 텐도 삼고요삼 단단히 삼기에나 아니 미잠게 콤바 논돌라 미잠 마이바 타바다 탐제kin 바토발이야 부림기야 적토에티 용기와라
So once we have the as our basis that avoiding rebirth into the miserable realms, then we can engage in the practices such as that we need in order to attain liberation, such as meditating on impermanence and suffering and uncleanness, and then cultivating the wisdom that knows selflessness, and then so we can practice those, and then we can also practice the spirit of enlightenment, cultivating the spirit of enlightenment, and the love and compassion, all of the virtues therein, and through this practice, through practicing in this way, then we can gradually we'll be able to reach to that state of liberation and finally to omniscience.
Mondora mi kova tobarchenero so shala so so pane mondora da mi kova rimgi tobachene ene ko atunga jiran shin shin tone rangi ko ale tarbata pesa mai basimje tamje ko atunga le tarbacha dechedo kyakun se yunde kunde simje tamje ki tön tubala ni toba mengenge sanje ji ko ban tobarcha dechedo ne chunye sam nyamle chigin samjane kuno sel tapche ni sen shos
So then you should listen to these teachings with clarifying your motivation that I will engage in the practices that, such as becoming disenchanted with cyclic existence and thereby attaining liberation, and then also all the practices that are required to reach to the high state of a completely perfect Buddha who's eliminated all faults and attained all good qualities, and has the capacity to help to work for the welfare of all living beings.
Lula Luan Chishin to Timo Guna Negative, Tizin Yomo Tamjaja, Timo Chombe Chombar Yuru said the Ledwa. Oh, then it Ludio on Botelia, Migi on Bolasoba, on Bashan Kanga, 10 Yoguara Sigara. Oh, then it Timo de Rangune Trubanzimba, Chutamje, Ranking away to Trubanzimbe, Timo de, and then Dojada, Condonga, Yellow Soba, Yomo Sama Tamjaki, Teletania, Telenani, Kiviora Sigara. Timo de. Nyomo sama tamjege shiam ne so gyurwa chani kigiyore sigura. Tijiri nyomo tamjege timu chombe chomba diosde sonda zawa timu dipa dadun zimba rangu ne chuban zimba dipa chomgiye na nyomo sama tamjege chomdure songudwa.
So we won't read through all the outline that because we did yesterday, but we're picking up where how to abandon confusion or eliminate confusion, and the first part of that is recognizing the root of the afflictions, and so the verse here states, as the tactile sense pervades the body, confusion is present in them all. By overcoming confusion, one will also overcome all disturbing emotions. Here, when it says as tactile sense pervades the body, it's saying that the tactile sense pervades all the other sense organs as well. So then, in the same way, confusion is present in them all means confusion is. Ignorance anyway. We can think of it as confusion, ignorance. It's just alternate translations for alternate words that have the same meaning. So here, confusion is present in them all means in all of the afflictions. It lies at the base of this seeing things as. Perceiving things as existing from their own side, or inherently existing, then that is at the base of all of the afflictions. So by overcoming confusion, one will also overcome all disturbing emotions or all afflictions.
Timugi tagbe ngobo segdo timugi tinzingi kandi tagi yorsena ngobo ani shingashi ngobo gashi rangwene trube yidu onate ro shingashi la rangwene trube ne yidu mewa ate balutene ani yidu onate le yako tobdogi tene debata yidu mewa ate le ko tyabji chobe towala sobo tezu yongi yore songdo.
So how does confusion work? As we were mentioning, it sees people and things as having the different qualities from their own side. Like in the case of attachment or craving, or and here it says desire. In the case of desire, seeing things as existing, having an attractive quality that exists from their own side, and things in people that is, and then also in terms of when we talk about anger or hostility, hatred, seeing that things in people have a unattractiveness, an inherent or a quality of unattractiveness from their own side, and then when you see that, then it generates anger and hatred.
Oya tende ko nyamo shenam nyamo chenje marik bala tenje so imba te chirsudo nyamo shenda sama de cha kondola sobo nyamo sama tamje sigora nyamo chenje marik basu yu rangu ne truban zimbe tenzi de nyamo cha sigora o matenju kapsute nyamo re de ora nyamo chenje marik ba sigora nyamo chenje marik basu tenzi de sigora o tenje so tele tene tenje te so imbe siro tsawa de nyamo tsawa de nyamo tamje sawa chingedi denzi de res gora te yeshe nyamo shen tamje gan tenjin de bar jwa rangshin ji trube tongba kom de ese temu chombe chombar gyurwe tongba tende ji tendo sheban beber chaos o te yede tenjin de bar jwa de tudan kenda takshidan chasheda tezula tenjin de bar jwa ane ngobuto su kanga su gora ane rangwe trube tongba yiduwa, yidumewa, karina ko rangune, tuwachi pikachi tsagandona, ngonechi nyeke yo marwa rangune. Ti meduza ko rangune tuba, rangshinji tuba, rangi ngoye tuba ti, tube tongba res gora. Rangshinji tube tongba kom des. Ti ngazu samlu tangchi ti kom nese. Timu chombar gyue, timu rangune yiduwa da yidumewa, zimbe loti pando sona, ane chakba kiya da kondru kiya de dondru yorba ma timu chombar gyurwe tongba tende ji tengdo shebal bebar chao se o rangi ne tongba asidi tenjin debar jungwa la ya mangbo ji tso debe chila sosi lo pa ta shaba tenma to chigi yuji ngwa ne yidu wang da yudu me wang siga de yoba maare siga warwa di me de ko tenjin debar jungwa sonza rangi ne tongba re rangu ne tongba sonza shenda le tejin de ni chwa de se tongba tendre ji tendre tongbe te o tendre sheba chego de songda.
So what's being said is here is that what lies at the root of all the afflictions is this disturbing attitude. Ignorance means afflictive ignorance. When we say afflictive ignorance, and from the viewpoint of the Madhyamaka, that is seeing things as somehow existing from their own side, and but in reality, but things don't exist from their own side, and so when we perceives things as well, the wisdom is then to perceive things as empty, or empty of this existence from its own side. When you analyze phenomena, that you can't find anything that exists from its own side. And then when you that is their freedom from inherent existence, and then at the same time they are dependently arising, means that they, well, whether you consider them dependent upon causes or dependent upon their parts and their basis of designation. However you perceive them in any of those ways, the dependent arising, then that through perceiving that, then you understand that they lack any kind of existence from their own side. So that these two, when you can see phenomena from these two sides of emptiness and dependent arising, then this overcomes that confusion of perceiving things and persons and the qualities therefrom to exist from their own side, and overcomes the disturbing emotions, the afflictions that are based on that perception.
Oh yeah. And the Chasha Neo Marwa. The Medusa co Yudi Mavarese, Yukoran Yomarese, Tilish. Shatachi Yungudua. No, that is long about the Zune. Yudi Yomaris, Yomaritima Reserva. Tambuko Kaksachi, Jipa Kaede, Kaksa Dungan Guyora. Kavakajas and the Kaksas Logan Gunzigumarese. Oh, Bumba, you don't want the Kawadose. China Meduada, you don't want the Yidome that in the Kaya, Kawada Pumba Kambaseti, Tantambali Yomari said, Tindis, Tomba Koichiora. Montan de Maris, the Kaksa de Murzing Guresologa, Makaya, Shire, Ni or Ese. Or the Kaksa de Cares. She let the Lepa Tagiora, the Yakundo, the Chijir, the Lepa Tagiora. Oh, Tasm, the Loyanga Pashaba Maiba. You Korangene, Nangarangi Yoseris. Nangarangi Yoseris. Korangene to your devilish. Shandal doesn't any Palu Tago, Tamaguachene. Korang and Echi, Rangene, Susungene Yoseris. What depend the Tara Chashagana? Ngazuri Jibariski, Kawariki, whenever Ngazam to watch it there, you recover and to watch you some Sandish. Ranganichi, some good one. What do you Rangune? Nangarang you some young ati, Tindeti you are Marese. Tindeti Mea Caresne, Tindeti Yonane, so good and send that sword and do she the tension journey, Patuquia Yomare. Ranguni Tindesiona. Rangune Drubadi Yomare, Rangune, Nadi Yuse and Nadi Sambonation Adina, Sobodi River, Kangba River, Lagba River, Lugi Chashe River Mare, Soa the River, Condo the River, Nagia the River, things in the river, Semgi Chashe River, Sudu River Mare. Tineco, Tini Medua, Tinu Rangune Drubati Meduse. Engine Devan Johnson, the Rangune Drubati Meduse. What Titonga say, well, Messicina, Maba the Mares and Gura. Do it.
So there's different explanations of emptiness and how to understand it. What distinguishes the way that J. Rinpoche explains emptiness is the necessity to understand what it is that the object of negation, what it is that we have to negate with respect to objects and persons. So, and the other scholars say, well, if you analyze and you divide it all into its parts, you can't find the thing that you're looking for, so that thing doesn't exist. That's a different approach that J. Rinpoche says, no, that you have to determine what is the object of negation. So when we think about when we perceive things and persons, that they have these qualities that seem to, as we've been talking, seem to exist from their own side. And existing from its own side means that the way things present themselves to us is that they what can I say? It's the way Geshe is saying it is that they don't. If you put a voice in them, they say, "I'm here. I exist here." You know, it's just like that they have their they already exist there. But if they existed like that, then they couldn't be dependent arisings. They couldn't be dependent on anything else. They already exist there. Why would they need to depend on anything else? Or we can say exist there or exist here, because when you consider the self, right? The self has this, you know, especially when you analyze and examine the self. If you imagine yourself in a kind of fearful or difficult situation, then the self appears just to be here. This is me, and that kind of existence from its own side rises up, and then at that point you have to analyze. Well, is it, you know, where is that self? And when you look through all the components of the mind and body and search for the self, you can't come up with anything that is that self. And so then in this sense, then we understand that it doesn't exist, but does that but also understanding that it exists as a dependent, that it exists dependently, also through that we can understand that it doesn't exist from its own side. It doesn't have an existence from its own side.
Oh yeah. Doctor says, Doctor says, Samsa country Sangutote, Rangan and Angarang Yeshe. Teneka Yenekavando Sene, Luigi Chashe, the Semji Chashe, the Segiora, Lundesne Chizune Kandipa to Yace, Chashe di Maritima. And it's so Mare Sem Marin, Dushi Mare, Nadia Mare Kondu Maritin said, oh, Tinde, but it till a loss or your mother, dear Marua. Dimide da rangune mere ese sangur rangune tongbare sa tongba sangura o tane rangun tongba da mere basa mare tenjin de var jungare ese pungbungala tenjin del en le ba ta pungbu chawa chinge de ta chawa chinge ndogudu tegudu da nyungi tunganyungi se chaji rongaji shagu yora sa tongbare to sunja tendere ya desende ora.
So when we examine the self, the self isn't going to be anywhere. If we analyze and look for where the self is, and this self that somehow exists from its own side. Another way of saying that, if you prefer, is exists in its own right. If you look for that, then you have to, it's not going to be anywhere except for within the mind and body. So when you examine all the parts of the body, you can't come up with such a self. And when you examine the mind, all the different components of the mind, you can't come up with such a self. So then what you come up with is an emptiness of this self. And does that mean that the self completely does not exist? No, it exists as a dependent arising. It exists in dependence on other factors, and whatever those. We can think of dependent arising in many different ways, but it exists in dependence on other factors, and then because it has this dependent existence, then it can function, and we can walk, we can talk, and we can think, and so forth, because of being dependently arisen, or dependently existent, if you prefer.
That's right. That do matter. Yeah, Timu Chomber Gurve, Tongba Tende Gitan to Shepherd Chaos Tanda, Rangone Tongba Sonza, Shala Thursday Delne Truba, Shala Thursday Delne Trugi, Rangone Tongba, so they tended Tongba Tongba Tendritas, or Tende Young School.
Get a young person, because Jalba the bed, Jalba Nana.
Oh, the Timu Chomber Gurve, Tongba Tende Gitan to Shepherd and Beber Chaos.
They.
Tongba Tende to Shepherd watches, Rangone Tongba de, Tongba Sonza, and a called Mabamare, Tenzin Rever enjoy your Segora. Tenzin Rever enjoy yours, Rangone Tongba Yongmares, Tende Tongba Tende Segora.
So then it says in the commentary here at the end, therefore make effort to understand emptiness as the meaning of dependent arising. So we can, when we analyze emptiness, then and can't come up with and we look for the self as existing from its own side. We look for such a self, and then we can't come up with anything that is that self. Then we understand that it's empty of such a self. And then when we take, does that self completely not exist? And then we look at from the viewpoint of the dependent existence of the self, then if something that is independently existent also is empty of existing from its own side. So we have to understand emptiness and dependent arising in this kind of complementary way.
Tanjibate Ponce Yambung so Sigua. Sanyamogi Sawa de Caresane, oh, Tandati Rediarda, Yamukanga, Zawadi. You Ramune Yobanzimba, Roa. Lufa, my English, Lufa, Tagba, some Maiba, Yuramune Yobanzibate, Yamogi Sawa, Tisha. Tanjibate Ponce Yambung so Giora.
So then, with that particular stanza, we recognize the root of the disturbing emotions. Now we're recognizing the antidote that eliminates it in this next stanza.
And they turned that timber mine by you, Rangune, Mabel, Rangune, you and Zingenge, and then you move Sawa, Timu Maribandi, Sora, Thabkhe Pangbarchashanase. Oh, bit touristic door.
So the question is here, what is the means to get rid of confusion, which is the root of futility?
No, Tine. Tapa di lakda nyukuta duchi la soba rangi ngoye ye na asikdwa. Oh, tene tezo chukari ne tezo sama rangi ngoye yoba yena. Ane nyukuta niban duchi la soba sigiwara. Yena sabe da marik bala soba teban minjulas. Nyuku rangi ne yoba yena. Ane sabe da chuda luda chuda sherda tezo kangala te mugua kora Korangwene suya keung kurvasi gyora. Sabiyonda, ane nipan duji ki le de ko rangwene chukguyo na, ane rangi ngoyo su chukguyo na, tongme marikpa da, tesu gyudan kienla kienla su chukugu marisi gyora. Marikpa la tebar mingyurwa shikna ase, tedala tebe chir, tebe yorisi gyora. Ane nyugu so yoba ne, tene yoba kona ingi, nyugu da, ane nipan duji ki le da, yidoma. Kari na ya ko, gyudan kienla tene, gyudan kiengi su tsone ane chosha chirisi gyora. Tene yoba kona ingi, rangi ngoyo yoba mimba rase, rangi ngoyo su yoba marese, nga rangi yoyosari marese gyora. Yoba mimba re, rigbe so tumala tene shebar chadesi. O di chubji ki rigba mangbula tene, chokari na rangi na yoba marese. Chenda gyudan kien mangbula toyachin deni yungi ware, dakshidan dakshila toyane chukgi warese, o di shebar chagurese uda.
So, if we look at the commentary here below the verse, if a sprout, if compositional activity and so forth existed by way of their own entities, it says here, or essentially exist, or is another way of saying that, they would not depend on the seed nor on ignorance, but they do. So because a sprout depends on a seed, and because compositional activity depends upon ignorance, then they don't exist by way of their own entities, that they do have, that they, if they did exist by their own entities, or by their own essence, or essentially exist, then that means that they, what do you say? They exist on their own. That they have their. Again, it's sort of like if you make it into a phrase, I'm here. I'm existing, in I don't need anything else. I can just exist on my own, something like that. Then, but because they depend on the seed and the ignorance, then they don't exist on their own. So, with the help of many different kinds of reasoning, one must understand that the existence of a sprout and so forth is exclusively a dependent existence, not an existence by way of its own entity, or an essential existence. So you can use many different reasons to come up with an understanding that they're dependent upon their causes and conditions, their parts and their basis of designation. So then they don't have this existence on their own, or on their by way of their own. By way of their own essence, by way or essential existence, or existence by way of their own entity.
That's how it is. Tension Japan Joane, Tona Timun Jung Minjusua. Tension Japan Joade, Rangune Tongba, Musum de Tonsona, and it Timuma Ribala Sobane, Rimipangan, Memory and Udes on Giora. A teaching Bebe Kunjin, teaching Beba Kunjin, the Tam de Konanya Barsase. Teacher Shijabe, Tenju Shijabe come dere, and then Beba Kunji, Tenju Shijabe come delia, and teaching Beba Kunjin, the Tam de Konanya Barsa. Tongba ki turned in it, Tendre get turned to Jura Tamde, and the corner never saw shaggy years on Giora. The Jabanian Dolos and the Chibari de Dua. The attention Japan Joan Ranking Oni, Mebani, Sigdo attention Japan Joan said. Musum do Sameton announced, Tona said there are. Timu Jomin Jula, Sedusa, timu jungmin jur sedra teacher baba kunji tamde kona nyebarja timu sebe nyumu bashen tamja seba jures teacher ane baba kunji tenju shigeba kamdir tongba tenje ji tendu jurwe suji tamde kona nyebarja wa inos mo tinyam do sebalo
When dependent arising, so now we can read the verse. When dependent arising is seen, confusion will not occur. Thus, every effort has been made here to explain precisely this subject. So, when dependent arising is seen means when you understand that that things don't have this existence from their own side. They present themselves as having an existence from their own side, things and persons, and in the case of persons, existence from its own side, okay, then if you see that they have this dependent existence, or they are dependent arisings, then you see that they couldn't possibly have this dependence from, or this existence from their own side. So then such a sight will clear away any confusion, and thus every effort has been made to explain precisely this subject. Means in the 400 here that emptiness is the meaning of dependent arising, or dependent existence is. That's what is being emphasized in this scripture. So if we look at the commentary, it repeats that same idea. When dependent arising, free from existence from its by way of its own entity, or from its own side, or essential existence, is seen. Means seen by direct, valid cognition, then confusion will not arise. You completely overcome your ignorance. And because confusion or ignorance is ended, then all the other disturbing attitudes or afflictions end. And thus here in the treatise on the 400, every effort is made specifically to explain how emptiness means dependent arising, how the meaning of emptiness is, how the meaning of dependent arising is emptiness. Well,
this oh yeah, then that did it. You could tend to talk about some J's to you could tend to talk about some tendon to talk about Mindy, they tendon to tribute time, but that member Yeshe Rose to one. Then you go down the talk when Tongba the Tango to the Tala ten the Togora, to Chile ten the Togora. In the coin you go double. Shingenalia, Yugumboya Keongora, Yugo Hakura, Yugumboya Keon Dusera. Sanjay ten dragon those on the Shingaji Italia, Yugumboya, Jag Shingayora, Yungomboya Mamboya and the Kete Italia, Tene Kelonzulus tending those on the Kelonda Su Tenji Devanjoa Tonga, the Chutoino, Su Chutonga, the Sanjay Toino search. The India coin you go double Mongotendia Keon Gudona. Yugu Churchian Sigara, and Rangune, Kiwa Mahindi, Rangune, Yava Mahindi, Rangune, Garas part of the Koraya, Yatayong give a soristua, Mumbuchi Hakona Rangune, Tayong give a soristua, Rangune, Kiwa Mahindi, Rangune, Yava Mahindi, and Tenjin Deberjoin Bachelor, Sa Chu, Lu, Sherry, Lula Soba, there's a Kangala Tenjin, and Koya. Chugi Yungiora. That Tenji never join in Beaches. Or a good idea, Mambuja saw the Koya to Chugiora. At the end of Rangune, Sukiwa, the Rangune Yoga Maresam. Said the cook to tell one, you could choose Rangune Kava Mede, Tenji never join in Beaches. So so that tension never join talk about some yet only talk about Mares. Get only to cheers. Or the tension never join good and can let any kigdoa. Tesonako Ramune Mare. Shella does in the courage we are some. Did the Hago Gara.
So the commentary continues, by merely understanding the dependent rising of a sprout, one does not understand its emptiness of true existence. If one did, it would not be a reason establishing emptiness of true existence. So what's this saying is that by merely understanding that a sprout is a dependent arising, that's not that in order to understand it as emptiness, we have to use reason in the beginning. We don't understand emptiness just by looking at a sprout without basing it on using reason or whatever your inference, if you like. So then when the Buddha taught the Rice Seedling Sutra or the Sutra on Dependent Arising, he was walking with his disciples and looking at a sprout coming up, and he was saying that sprout does not, it presents itself, as existing from its own side. It somehow looks like it has everything it needs to exist without anything else. It just presents itself in that way, that here I am, and I can exist on my own here. So then the Buddha pointed out that there's a I don't know if I get anyway. You can make a logical statement out of this, where the sprout doesn't exist from its own side because of being a dependent arising. So the Buddha pointed out that this sprout does not exist from its own side. Why? Because it's dependent upon many causes and conditions, all the water and the fertility of the soil and the warmth and so forth. All these things come together to make it so that you have a sprout. It's a dependent arising, and therefore it doesn't it doesn't exist from its own side, or it's empty of existing from its own side. Wow.
Yeah, tena rangi ngoyo yo bala, neba tuma thongne se, rangi ngoyo yo na, ane ta kagre kansa ribji rangi ngoyo yo na, ta ane kansa yinge de kagre sobure, choare, kare se rwa. Yo na neba tuma thongne se. Chunam ji yo ba nye ba ne, tene yo ba kona, chunam yo se re, di nyugure, di kansa re, di medo re se kanga de, tene yoba kona kundu chube sora. Shendalo tene ene chupa chiko imba chik. Rangi ngoyo mebe se, korang ngoyo yoba maare se. Tene chupa sonza rangi ngoyo meba de shubji tokto gure se. Tenji koto gure se. Tokba shi kwebe tenye de. Rikba chujube chuju zandile juwa to, rikba chujuba la soba chuju dan tsawa dan dreba oto zunar sungba na shi. Tenjin dreba juwa sonza ane rangunya mewa res. Ti koko res nguda. Pena dawa ore ti chila alisha.
So if we continue with the commentary here, it says, when one discovers that existence by way of a thing's own entity is invalidated in many ways, one discovers how phenomena exist. And so when you use different approaches to see how things can exist from their own side, and then when you understand that they have a dependent existence, then that's how they actually exist. They have a dependent existence. They don't have the existence from its own side, from their own side, or things and persons don't have this existence from their own side. Means that, and when you understand that they don't have this existence from their own side, then, as it says here, means that one should thereby, you sort of indirectly, or what do you say, implicitly understand that they do not exist by way of their own entities. By understanding that they exist dependently, then you implicitly understand that they don't exist by way of their own entity, as it says here, or by way of, they don't have existence from their own side, or by way of their own essence. So this resembles what appears in the expression of worship in the text and commentary on the 60 stanzas, Nagarjuna's 60 stanzas of reasoning. He has this expression of worship, and then the commentary thereon.
Tenen Jonas and Duchet and the Sigara. Judan Jambo Sobala Tene, and Eco Ya Tayongara. You would Judan Jambo Sobala Tene, and the Kishi Tambuki on Nivati, Sombachi Shivajidia, Panjesu Kayongora. Eco Judan Jam Tenji, and the Panje and Jonas Sigara, Tenji Deber Joan. Judan Jambo Sobala Tene Kotsu, Kiji Tambuni Sombachi, Kayondi, Trubiondi. And the Kawadi Ramune Kawachi Homares, Tension Kawades, Gora. Oh, Tini I checked the Dakshidan Doshilla, then a Tagbet in the Sigua. Dakshipena, Kambayina, Kansa in the current Dakshipumbuta, Chiyovashe, Kurama Ingechera, Choshe Mambuyora, Dakshisha. Teletania, oh, the Kambare, oh, the Miri, the Medores for Tagdua. Zako Dakshi. Rama Inge Dakshiam Chashe Latene Doje Gilefa Takba Jamla Shago Tendis, Tene Takbe Tendis Niagudwa. So could you like Latene, Niva Sumbashiba, the Toyonde, Ramune Kyo Mevra. Oh, Chuk and the kind of Kurama Inge Chashe, the Dakshilatene, Lefa Takba Samla Shago Yude, Tene Takbal Shago, Ramune Mevra. Oh, did some lieutenant, Raman Mevra. Some Lukogura.
So, when we think about things as not existing from their own side and through using the reason of dependent arising, there's two ways we can understand dependent arising. One is the dependent arising of caused phenomena. And so in this one then, through understanding that things arise in dependence upon collections of causes that are constantly undergoing a process of change from one moment to the next. When you understand that things are dependent upon this on these causes and conditions that are constantly under in a state of flux, then through that we know that they can't exist from their own side or in their own right. And so that's one approach. And the other approach is through the understanding of dependent arising as in terms of dependent designation, that it's things depend on, the basis of designation is all the things that are other than the thing itself, okay? Like all the different parts that go into creating something. So that's its basis of designation, and it's other than the thing itself. And then based on that basis of designation, we impute the thing with with our mind. Our mind imputes terms and concepts, and, through using terms and concepts. Or you can just simply say our mind imputes to that the thing to that basis of designation or basis of imputation, if you will. So then once it exists as a dependent imputation like that, or a dependent designation, then it can't exist on its own, okay? And therefore, in that way, also we understand that a thing does not exist from its own side, or things and persons do not exist from their own side.
Oh yeah. I don't know to do shana. Tenzin driver junga katene tongba ni du shesu do. Womulu ruch. Tenzin driver junga sonza rangune tongba ni shebare sala.
Right.
Oh, ane da rangune tongba yina ane da chodi mere besne meva mare se. Tene tene takba ti tini umela minus. Takshida chashal tene pa takba zamle shagure se. Eta umelam karesne rangune tongba. Ane meva mare tene takba zamle yobas. Oh, this shebdo.
So in the so we can understand that Nagarjuna is then saying, what is Nagarjuna saying? He's saying that things don't exist from their own side or they're empty of existing from their own side, or they are emptiness, you could say, because of being dependent arisings. And then, does that mean that they completely don't exist? No. They, because they are dependent designations, okay, then they exist and they can function, okay, because they exist because they have this existence as dependent designations, then they can function. And so this kind of an understanding then Nagarjuna proclaims as the middle way.
Oh yeah. Dan do so da better da. Penan dawa nyawa na mimba jigba shino sigdo. Tenjin driver jo tongba ni di yabu je ha ko suna. Ngusu do to suna. Ani karsore. Mu chama tamje de jigdo ri sigora. Ti pedelen dawa kingur yosu to ne sebe sha suna. Mimba chama jigba shino sigdo.
So the example is the full moon dispelling darkness is the idea that when we have the wisdom that knows emptiness, then and a direct perception of emptiness, then it completely eliminates the darkness of the afflictions.
Well, that's somebody that Toja Bonzu Chitado Shebala Niso, Kondodan, the Chaponzu, Mixeyan Rere Shegdo, the Chaponzu that Troa Bonzu Nietzsche, not on the Chaponzu de Liani, the Chala Chuva Kansagetsini. The Chashe Kansa to the children of a condition good essay. The Chesons in Betap Teliaco, the Cha Panyadani, Rimgi, or Tindelia Guelia, Tapshi condition would S. Nishigua. Not on within the Jala Chuva Kansavi, Chinese some Rangshin doing the door. Or did she share?
So now we're changing again to the third section here on the way to abandon manifest disturbing emotions or afflictions, and it's a detailed explanation of how to abandon anger and desire, or hostility and attachment, or however you want to think of those. So the first part here is how to abandon attachment, how to eliminate attachment. And the first part of this is two parts. The first part being the characteristics of a person who is habituated to attachment, and then the means of caring for such a person is the second part. Well,
no, yeah. Don't talk about this one. Tado Sanjin Dira, Tado Sanjin So Kala, Tombo Sabo, Zangshin Juru, Kandela So Cheninam, Dosha Changi Milan Sigua. Oda di Cochidan Kandiri Yorsene, Titado, and a Sanjin se, Chick Doga in the Tavia, Gongo Chingin of Tindishel Cabuyora. Sanji So, and then Doga Tavia, then Shed Ayada. And it's method that teach Kenjan Yabutayada or Kado than Shela, Tendi Yabusopta Yabuso Conge, Netomabo, Shandalichi Yanchida, Chalan of Taya, the Chituya, the Sayat and Delia, Tomabo Chimbu, Tombu Yungeda, Sandra Chimbu Yunge, Kevla Pad and Denver Yuada, Somborma, Kajan, Kadukadu Shengeda, or Tendela Sobe, Senich and the judge and Geshe was a patient in the Yores or Ashalam. And if she done she showed the Leacotil and Dogbatage, who conducts to do the Madon Drummer and Minium, she tried to chew your Mara, till and Dogba answer. And it Timusha showed the Gochiba, the Kanga doesn't desirachi, Kasha and Kasha and get it in the race.
So, how does one recognize people in whom desire is a strong habit? They always like claiming the earth, are extravagant, greedy, and fastidious. Characteristics such as these are seen in people with desire, attachment, craving. So the commentary, that's the claiming the earth is a kind of part of a drama, I don't know, a play, I guess we'd call it a play or a drama, or a dance. Here it uses the word dance, where there's the character does some kind of dancing. So they always like dances such as claiming the earth, quote unquote. They like fun, flirtation, flowers, perfume, garlands, jewelry, color, and so forth. So then they are extravagant to others. They're greedy, fastidious, clever, alert, and speak frankly. Characteristics such as these are seen in people with attachment. And they're opposite in people habitually inclined towards anger and hostility. So this idea of they're opposite just means because this person who has a lot of attachment seems very outgoing, then somebody whose anger is just sort of like and sort of irritated and mumbling to themselves is just the opposite of that. You know? So then those whose behavior is mixed are inclined to confusion. So that confusion then would be these characteristics would sort of be mixed around. Confusion being ignorance. Well,
that petty tenders to a petty countries. When a Nurjuji Shasa, Soja Nazo Duba than Toar Shabashino Suda, nor Rabin from Gengi, Tisunyam do Young Gengi, Shasa Mima into Semendo. And 고야 나서고 주되니 고야 간거 루루스우르세다 도차 셰치와도 주스기와라 너 콘도 셰치와는 데랑 메시버지 도와르제바시노사
Well, so the example is of a wealth creating God, if a spirit. If you have in your house a spirit that then you accumulate a lot of things, and so then if you somehow get rid of this spirit, then all the things go away too. You don't have so many things.
Paniba te chesun zembe tabshegdo. Chesun zembe tab kansa de da de shashachi wa kanres chesun zengures go. Do shashachir chebe do tab kanshina tin do yak tabshi karesana segro. Ne sangye namji chakjen la seda chögo zula kan kelek pangba tamje da da do lame tene sung segdo. 데 상계 좀 되는 남진 제보다 님도 로긴다 아니 교가 용구라 상계 남지 착전라서 착바시에 저 간사되달이야 가세다 최고다 줄라 칸라 속바 gelek다세 가세 표준 속바다 최고다 대사다 간가 다다 단디부셰셰 샤도즈나 제고레스 거라 착바제외 신제바다 상보 빵바 탐제다 다도 라메 태도 나버 송소소 어디서다 상계는 가세다 최고다 줄라 칸라 속바 약바다 렉바시고라 착바제외 신제바다 상보 빵바 탐제다서 어때서만 요르다야 걸리걸 봐 요르다야 탑시 제고래 송기도 아니 따도 라메테도 네버 송소세 두다도 라메틸라 샤제네 틸 랍제자기 자기 걸리걸고 현자 총으로 땅고래서 그러 따도 라메 꾸웬 되자 투어는 줄라세 두다도 라메 코섬을 따기 따기 제르베르베 티제네 아니 고 현자 총으로 토그래서 그러 라베 담베 취미 이지 봉아린 교로세 아니 라바 팀 잡지 수도자네 주시 많이 베지도도 르메르메 방도레세라 차제라 네다 멜다 네스 대사도서 멜스 녀제다 된도서시거라 메덴다 세다 최고라 신베 님부 장베 연대 중니 송소세 어딘데시 덴베덴베니 마뇨르다네 도서 신장도에 제도 장배 연대 중에서 그래서 셰서마데 연대 중에 셰서 셰르와 장배 연대 중이라 소바테서 림베림베코 땡기오레스 엠버라 아니 송소세 장배 연대 중이 땡데는 곧 내래 신자매바 불로래 신자매바 로 아니 고래 신자매바 강가리 신자매바 지게 나디 삼사 현자 숙청부 차스스 매게 잔로로 현자 뉴른도 요라 어딘데 탑신제기 요레스기도 아니 그래서 다 시단 줘봐 남라 내가 소바 텔렌 도바테 시단 셰침부들 내가 비한테서 강가 코로나 신이제 고야도서 다다다다 샤마도 코칼레 각부카 주네는 콘도 삽샤기 요라 디바도 로테야
So, Truman Yeshe Truman Yeshe do you want to? Truman Yeshe. You're the bed.
Come on, do it. Truman Yeshe orba. Tuar do labe. Ambe Truman Yeshe born Jurusida. Tado lame kules lama labse jamsigora. Ndejalo soba rimbe chunchun do resora. Labe tambes de timdebje sudisigora. Truman Yeshe born ye Truman be Yeshe.
Indeed.
Netungonela mebechi kototagiora. O dia washibure tichegure samsatin de yongora. 내주문에를 매버데 그나 이동하는 어디에 야보도 같은데 어디가 잡고래 뒤에 야보도 왔습니다. 주미 이제 순대라. So 내주를 매버데 콜학바도 tor없이 따지는 것도 용기와라. 주미 지금 남도 이든 되자다 콘도 간가연 거라. 주미 지금 남도 매나 그 응원에 내신 통보에는 콘도 기그 말은 되자 기그 말와.
네. This is one phrase I just wanted to, because if I read it, you'll go, what? So, and Buddha's told, so anyway, So this is caring for somebody who has the means of caring for such a person who has attachment. So how does one train someone in whom desire or attachment is a strong habit? Buddha's told those with desire that, or attachment or craving, that food, clothes, and dwelling are all to be avoided and to remain close to their spiritual guides. So the Buddha's told those with attachment that objects of beauty and quality which stimulate attachment and craving, such as fine food, clothes and dwellings, are all to be avoided. That means that to be reduced, okay, to slowly, fewer and fewer, and that they should always remain close to their spiritual guides. Here's that word that I was looking for yesterday. That everybody's staying in their what did I say, in the temple. It's really dwelling in this it's a more general understanding of the word, so dwelling is a good translation. So being made to work constantly by their spiritual guide will curb their desire and craving, and through instruction and training they will be able to rid themselves of their incorrect mental approach. So the idea here is that they're constantly close to their spiritual guide, so that they're getting constant instruction, and this helps them to overcome their attachment, and at the base of attachment and hostility is this incorrect mental approach. Means that you're projecting onto, or projecting or superimposing on something a quality that doesn't exist there at all. Okay, so then if you actually knew how that thing, how that thing actually existed, you wouldn't do this kind of superimposition. But so then relying on the spiritual teacher helps them to get rid of this incorrect superimposition. So then those with desire were taught 12 rules of training, like we had before, to counteract attachment to dwelling places, beds or seats, and food and clothing, like we were talking about yesterday. And so you have those 12 that help the person to reduce their through limiting their these four things in some way. Then the person can then get control of their attachment. And so then those habituated to anger should make use of dwellings, beds, food, and clothing that are contrary to these. So the idea is that because they will get, if a person who has is habituated to anger doesn't have all the things that he or she needs, then they're going to get irritable and angry easily. So it's contrary to the way that you're taking care of or caring for the person who has attachment. Well,
oh yeah. Ore pena tramse simbu kurwala mizama chimben roashino se. Tende de segi sare dande tramse ri dabtinde tongde dabtinde ke yorwa. De ke yorwa. O tende chide yan samsal midinde le shu yungudwa.
Oh.
You never show the chinga chi say young do. Why young you do? You know, Miss.
Somebody each Yeshe do.
No, then the Yora. No, they should do that. Mizawa Jimbendrois, Kotanga Chimbosoza, Changra with the data, Shadra with the data, Tishan and the Yora. Tangazabella and the Chido, Kaja didn't mean shooting Chichido. And they show me Madonna Sanjana Chido. Sanjana into the young Colada Shumidua. So what it took to do, you said it.
So the Geshe was asking me if we have this kind of belief in our culture, and we do. To have the idea of possession by some spirits, and so and apparently spirits can enter somebody who's a Brahmin, and so if someone captured by a Brahmin ogre gives him unclean things, he will go away. So the idea is that they've been possessed by. It's really like a. They entered the person, and then so being a Brahmin ogre, then if you have some unclean things and that you show them, then the spirit will just leave the person's body, or the ogre here it says. So we have this in Tibet also, the same idea. If some people just get possessed by spirits, and then if you don't want that spirit in you, what you do is you just sort of head for the bathroom, and then when you get in the bathroom, it just goes away. So that's handy. Heading for the bathroom is a little different in Tibet, In Tibet, here bathrooms are very clean, but in Tibet it's just like, whoa.
Niba 12 ponzu said the Redua. Niba da Condro ponzu gave she the Latin Zanga de Dua. Condro Nimi Samba say, Condro with Gun Sambudua. And then Troy Tenzu, Troy Nimbo Condro Nimbo Tenzu gave a shake dua. And then Gun Mebala Shewa, make Gun Mebala Condro Society said dua. A Jajan never Meba Kagbata. Sobe Pay Samne, Troy Kagba Shangi. Kedu sebala soba komri bata to zenga de shegdo kina ne da tangbo de kondro nimi sambane se kondro nimi de shegdo troa pon de bete nimi samgo resti shegdo.
So now we're on to the second section here on how to detailed explanation how to eliminate anger and hatred and hostility and desire, attachment, craving. And then this second section is explaining extensively how to eliminate anger or hostility. Hostility I prefer because it's talking about actually harming someone, so it's hostility. And then, so considering the disadvantages of anger, of hostility is the first one, explaining extensively how to apply antidotes to hostility, then refuting that it is not wrong to punish the slanderer of an innocent person, and preventing anger by considering the benefits of patience, and finally appropriateness of cultivating patience when disparaged by others. So, well.
Nuba Kana and Semebas, top chamber in the Condusene, and round the top member to the local never took with us to be Mambuche took with it. Teach any so mission that never took with it. Round a member until never member to never took with his water. Then touch a teacher, I did touch a rest, make go at the Tuzitanova, Minyam Judozulia, neba mangbuche gore yabu maris gora o shala nebe neba meba jeba de nyamdo losha shala nebe neba meba la trebe sigdo shire nagbur che tondo zo nagbuche ko namju damendate ne koran koran do medu bache tegre sigora shen che ge pajud la ke ge mara o shire nagbur che tonir deba kondosan de tondo zo jangamji damchi ge ora so Daniel do medu ban bashi chelas so tonde kondosan mizutana ko shena sangere che madu pajud de neba ke tu mara sigora tomde neba che kana ya chawa me ta tomdan demba zo kondosan so na ene tomde neba che kana ya chawa me ne mishandal chawa me ge de zo trosona ene mikyobuto zo ne mi mangbolya ko neba chigre sigora de doshu de sigora taje chejar chode te rangshen ku nyambar chebeshir so me bas kondu chen me bas shandale ke mangbo chigre rawata mangda kya ne me mangbo segre ke mangbo chigre do o de sigora
So this first part is considering the disadvantages of hostility. Through hostility, those who are powerless only make themselves look ugly. When this is people who are sort of powerless means they don't have the ability to really overcome the person that they're angry with, and so their anger has no effect on the other person. Whatever they do, it only makes themselves look very ugly, how their face changes and so forth. But one who has power and is merciless is said to be the worst. So this is talking about the powerful, then, what do you say, becoming hostile and harming those that are inferior or in a lower position than themselves. And so that such a person is then in the world, then that kind of anger and misuse, then we call that abuse, I think, probably. So then that kind of abuse then is the worst. So hostility towards those one is powerless to harm makes one's face turn dark, while angry frowns and the like make one look ugly. So it's by saying just here, he's saying that the anger has no effect on the person that you're angry at, and it's futile, and so then the only thing that happens is that you get very dark face and you're all wrinkled and it just look ugly. So, however, the merciless anger of those who have the power and the ability to harm is said to be the worst, since it is detrimental both to themselves and others. So this kind of anger is where somebody who has power over the people or the person that they're angry at, but so often this kind of hostility then results in many people's deaths and great harm to the people, and so then it's terrible for both the people that are the victims and also the perpetrator of the harm.
Yeah. 남주대 내가 시럽도 내가 야부치고 말이 적신도 저 콘도세서 가리네 치신 거라. 아니고 가르쳐래. 소소니 야부 마군게. 대한다지 대서 표심 잡아요나 거 기부면게 배 콘도세네 미기비시 되고라. 아니 빙자 로바도 가고 다 코짜마시 코뇨자 요아삼 신하지 되기로 봐. 순기로 봐. 이 순주요라. 메주 야고진 다 텐데실라 티콘도 사요래 아니 뭐지 뇨다 수르다 시기도 와. 섭소지 시단도 마치마도 티콘도 사요래 시기도 와. 아니 견제를 다지 시다 요나 콘도세네 견제 견나고 닝제 부통기 말와 봐. 신나서 돈을 당기 맞도 지기라. 다들 망보여라.
전주를 배. So this is from Chandrakirti. Chandrakirti lists, various faults of anger and such things as changing the face and making yourself look ugly. Then another one is to it affects your ability to your judgment. You can't what do you say, your intelligence, you can't think properly, and so you don't you can't use good judgment, and then if you're angry with somebody and say in your family, and then even you try to decorate yourself, what do you say, to try and look good, you try to dress yourself or put on jewelry or whatever, everybody will just sort of turn away and not and always not be able to look at you because of your what do you say, irritable nature, ready to get angry. And Niba de gana yang yarsunana de damba de dong gyurgiyor what?
Tamba membati. Tamba membata.
And then you sort of become a what do you say?
Chuda chumishibe namju choshi.
Right.
Namju ko leba da lega ya uchi ma namju ma muchigra.
So then you become not a what? How do we say this? I forget it. Or you're not sort of a noble person. You lose your status as being, sort of, what do you say, a good-natured or noble person, something like that, or a gracious, noble person. Well,
those are. Oh, didn't do it. That didn't go to those, ne? Pena tramsichi rigdan gawa, neba chebe shenlaya. Neba shino sigdwa. Ko kondu sabuche neba shimbu yunene shirangla nu mishanda mambulbe neba jetu buyorwa. O di indi ko tramsi chigi cheba ngembarib cheche changtu no ta tramsi zuge changtu gudu asere. Taba zuge chiji chigidu asere chidang kangal kuwa tabi yunguyora. O di sigora.
So then the example here is a Brahmin contravening the rules of his caste, which harms others too. It's just the same idea amongst monastics. It's the idea is that if they're always contravening the rules, like getting angry would be, then it not only brings harm to oneself, but also brings harm to others.
Nyembu tenzu shedo, kondru nyembu tenzu dele yang tenzen arishtuwa. Kondru nyembu tenzu dele.
I think they're looking up to Brahmins, and that same sense of looking up if somebody breaks the rules.
This one.
No, then let's see. The Sumba de Bay.
Niba.
Niba.
Niba troye nyembu tenzu, kondru nyembu tenzu dira. Tama yige dua karsure.
Oh, ne.
This one.
Oh, this one.
Oh, dili yang dua rangi. Digben drebu sechi ge kenla chwa merik basa. Kondru saya sunane saba komshagini digba saya dugyora. O te sunza rangi digben drebu sechi re tel kondru sa gyo mare se. Yidu mehu we tsig rangi ne bar takba yengi ngo nyeki nöji mimbe chwa mera. Tsig sengeri chig laba yena ko rangshingi nöji ke mare soso semgi pa nöba sugu yore se gyora. Tintigi mare se gdo. Lugi tenju le shewa bola chebar cheba chawar shebe chinjilo imbadans. Lugi ne kebi lugi tenju tuzunaliya, ane soso liya tsu tukja lamge tuzuliya, ane pala ti len lo gu re se yung gu dos ti rig ma re se do shen gi lo yu do kyun se war che ba la chwar mi ro so so kyun di shen dal pa ko chu ba ti la chwar mi ro ba membe singe me ba la chwar mi ro ba os mi memba tu tu ran la chik du ja la na chwar mi ro ta ten zeng ga de she do o nge na ne ta thang bu de nga zo rang ge tik ben je bu se je gi kyen la chwar mi ro ba se de tang bu she do ti she da
so we're on the second part here of how to eliminate anger, and goes into more detail, explaining extensively how to apply antidotes to hostility or anger. Then there are 5 parts. The inappropriateness of hostility at the circumstances which terminate the effects of ill deeds. Then inappropriateness of anger because unpleasant words are designated as harmful by oneself and are not inherently harmful. It's something that we're just creating in our own minds that these are somehow harmful. The advice to punish the abuser in treatises on social conventions is wrong. So just using cultural conventions as an excuse for anger is also wrong. So then inappropriateness of anger at those who make others aware of one's faults, and then inappropriateness of anger when inferiors use abusive language. Right.
Yeah, I did my dinner. Right. You do me by a traffic door. Oh, it's also now I'm doing a tramming by to just love on a sigara. Narje, Dictor Cheber Chose, Narsasha, to be Budico, Zochubare, Zobare sigara. Monche Tamba, Maimba, Tiny number, Da Mendose. When there's a server comes, could seek to just love the Sosungema part, seek to just love Nati, Miki and Trebudi, Zondo, and so to get started to Yore. Yagares, some Gure sigara. Oh, you do develop you da, you do me on where Tatubane, Ranking Arjebe, Tiben Debu Chune, Tarjeber, Chebes, Zochu Yore sigara. Cheben, Debu Sebe, Kencheba Lase, Mikiven Debu Sebe, Kenchi Yore, Sabacomshagina. Cower Mejeber, Tor Combanes, oh, then during at the Sabacoya, Cookapchons, could do that laving Yema. Miguel 7 Jabin Giritis also some good air some Guara. Lendela Moshe, number Maimba, Dani Tiba, number Tabar Mendebar said to Legum de Hamakusa, Munguarisha, laying in 7 Jabudi, Seduja Labreta, Sova Comshana, Tizo, Nikiwa, Manjon Bache, Yahweh Grace and Guara. Dani Tiba, number Tabar Mendebar said to say.
So here, inappropriateness of anger at the circumstances which terminate the effects of ill deeds. So it is foolish to feel angry when one hears harsh words. And the idea here is that hearing harsh words is the effect of one's own karma, and by that karma taking effect, it's disappearing. So then, why would you worry? Why would you get angry about that? It's a good thing. It is said, unpleasant words end previously done ill deeds. The ignorant and unwise do not want to purify themselves, so you're getting rid of this, right? You're getting rid of this bad karma, we can just say, but it's some kind of non-virtuous karma. Hearing unpleasant words is said to rid one of the effects of previously done ill deeds, and by bringing them to an end. So your ill deed is taking effect and is terminated. So not to feel glad but angry at the circumstances that end these effects is simply to be ignorant regarding actions and their effects, and unwise in not wanting to purify ill deeds. So then you're, on the one hand, you're purifying yourself of previously accumulated bad karma, and then on the other hand, you're doing it, you're reacting with hostility when, in that circumstance, instead of just being glad, happy, joy, kind of, say, oh, this is good, kind of taking joy in it, then, or delight, then this is simply being ignorant regarding karma and their effects. Karma and its effects means, first of all, just not understanding that this is the effect of your previous karma, but sort of also understanding that you're getting rid of something that will only. If you know this is just getting rid of your karma and you don't get angry, then you're not setting yourself up for creating more. Sort of fostering more bad karma.
That's why. That better pena langen la men derwe zu swebashinu sedra. Lango rabtin be nazo dujashina. Ane telia ko men tane zu juni chichidu ko langen bachidu samje langzi tange tel ko rago tone sebatin de yungu so dinashir kuran pa pen dog yore pen dog bade ha mago su ne ba ke yore sugala. Rago seba singen bajilamna seba komshana Nyama singen ba labge leg na media ta ane seba komshana kewa mangbo sa wa kondum tikba majum ba kewa mangbo sa yage social pen dog yore pen dog bade ne ba chigi sambare se
So then we have to remember that also that this part of feeling glad is also that you're glad to get rid of that bad karma, but also glad to have the opportunity to cultivate patience, and because through patience you would collect a lot of good karma, and so then so it's like it's a great opportunity, and so it's the example here is like an old bull killing the cowherd who gives him medicine. Apparently the bull was very sick, and then the person in charge of the bull, the cowherd, then he's giving the bull medicine, but the bull feels that he's doing something harmful to him, and then gores him to death. So the idea is that we're just foolish if we don't see it as a good opportunity.
This one.
So the time is finishing on this class, so we'll stop here at 1:41.